Hi, this is Chris Sorrentino, Combat Counselor. Are you ready for another episode of Combat Counselor Q&A? Here we go. Got my hat on. This is episode 3 of Combat Counselor Q&A. I'd like to welcome you. You can see the environment's a little bit different than used to. We're going through some changes and moving offices, so stay tuned for even more changes. The first episode of Combat Counselor Q&A, I talked about a basic overview of body-mind behavior therapy and my approach to therapy, psychotherapy, counseling. In episode 2, we talked about what you need to look for when searching for a psychotherapist, whether it's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, licensed professional counselor, licensed clinical social worker, some of the pitfalls there. Today we're going to talk about what you want to talk about, which is your questions. First question we have is from Matt in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Matt asks, what's the first thing that you do when you have a new client? Well, when I have a new client, first thing I do is make sure that we're compatible. I usually interview them on the phone, find out what kind of problems they're having, and if I may be appropriate counselor to see them. Second thing I do is set up a initial consultation. My initial consultations are always free of charge, so that we can sit down and get to know each other a little bit better, find out a little bit more about the problem that they may be having or what they want to work on, and then fill them in on my background, my philosophy, in order to see if we are compatible and really want to move forward in therapy and commit to a number of sessions together. Once we decide, and we don't always decide to work together, I may decide the client's not right for me, or I can't help the client, or vice versa, but once we decide to work together, what I do is set up a assessment interview, and usually a standard session usually takes about 50 minutes. That's 50. And the assessment interviews normally take a bit longer, usually an hour to an hour and a half, probably averaging an hour and 15 minutes. I don't charge anything extra for these assessment interviews. My standard rates apply. But during the assessment interview, I ask them many questions about their background and social history and occupation and medical history, many things, and also questions to either rule in or rule out different types of what I call diagnoses. Not that I used a diagnosis in my treatment, because I don't accept insurance, and so it's not necessary, and I try and stay away from the stigmatization of giving someone a diagnosis. But in order for me to treat them and have the appropriate therapy and use the appropriate techniques, and my techniques and my therapies are different for every disorder and are based on empirically supported treatments. Empirically supported treatments meaning that they've been proven in randomized controlled trials in research with many subjects, and scrutinized very intensely, that these therapies actually work. And so what I do is interview them to find out more about what's going on, prioritize their issues, and then set up a case conceptualization, which I share with the client at the next session, based on what I think is going on in their life. I don't necessarily tell them that I think you have obsessive compulsive disorder or whatever the diagnosis might be, but I explain things in terms that they understand, and then during the next session usually I'll explain in detail what I found out, and there's many assessments involved. I give them all kinds of psychometric instruments, tests to measure different things in their personality and their background, etc., to come up with this case conceptualization. So the first real session that we have is session 3, where we start talking about issues in detail, and where we really start going to work. What I usually do is, start with the client giving me an overview of their perspective of what's going on, and then we start to talk about, and this is where body-mind behavior therapy comes in. We start with the body, in that the way you treat your body has a significant impact on your psychological health, as well as your physical health, of course, but your mental health is affected by physiological issues, things going on in your body that you have a great deal of control over, actually. So the first thing I do, and I do this during the assessment interview, is ask them if they've had a recent physical. And if they haven't had a recent physical, I recommend that they get one, because there's many different kinds of hormonal imbalances and other biological based issues that can have an effect on mental health and manifest themselves in psychological issues. For example, thyroid conditions can sometimes mimic panic disorder, the symptoms of panic disorder, the racing heart, the sweating, the different symptoms associated with panic. So first thing we do is make sure that they have had a recent physical, and then we go over the results of that, and usually we do that during the assessment. But if they haven't had a physical, I usually highly recommend that they have one before we start treatment. It is possible to treat somebody without a physical. I try not to, but it has been done. In any case, starting with the body in body-mind behavior therapy, we focus on 3 things. Number 1 is diet, and diet includes not only ingestion of food, but ingestion of substances, meaning, alcohol, drugs, and other types of things that people ingest into their bodies. The second is exercise. Exercise has been proven in research study after research study to do wonders for not only physical health but for mental health, and helps reduce cortisol levels in the blood, which have an effect on levels of stress. So exercise is extremely important. And the third thing is sleep. Sleep is critical. And I know I can't do much anything with less than 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep. So those are the first 3 things we look at. So in terms of diet, if they're doing any kind of substance abuse, we want to talk about that. So if the alcohol intake is over a moderate amount, which is 2 to 3 drinks a day, for men, 1 to 2 drinks a day for women, and a drink is 1 beer, one 12-ounce beer, 1 5-ounce glass of wine, or 1 1.5-ounce shot of say 86 proof alcohol. If they're drinking more than that, that's a problem. Moderate alcohol use, like the ones I just described, have been shown to actually help physical and psychological health to a certain degree. There's varying views on that and debates, but most of what I've read indicate that moderate alcohol use can be helpful. Do they smoke? Smoking involves the ingestion of nicotine, besides other very harmful substances that they put in the tobacco. But nicotine is a stimulant. Nicotine can give people shakes, trembling, increase the heart rate, all the things that stimulants do. So we want to try and eliminate or have them cut down on smoking. And then there's illegal substances, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, you name it. People ingest all kinds of things. And obviously you want to curtail those kinds of things if you're really serious about working on your mental health, because if you're ingesting those types of things on a regular basis, on a daily basis, there's no use doing anything in therapy until you've taken care of those issues. So those are the things we talk about in terms of diet and ingesting substances other than food. In terms of a good diet, I am not a nutritionist, but I know a fair amount about nutrition, and I usually refer them to the government's website on used to be the food pyramid. Now they've got another system, but basically entails eating small amounts of fat, good fats, not trans fats, which are man-made fats, but the polyunsaturated fats like olive oil and the like. A small amount of fat is necessary in your diet. So small amount of fat every day. Want to have protein in the diet. You're talking about chicken and beef and those types of things. Beans, peanuts all have protein. Fruits and vegetables being the next biggest category. You want to make sure that they're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables. What I've read is 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And then whole grains, whole wheat bread, not white bread, which is processed bleached flour, and it does nothing for you. But good solid foods, organic in some cases, but it's not necessary. But make sure that they're eating a good diet and not ingesting a lot of harmful substances. The next thing we focus on is exercise, and if they're involved in a regular exercise program. It could be simply walking the dog every evening for 15-20 minutes, or walking or jogging 3 times a week for 20, 30, 40 minutes, all the way up to daily exercise routines and being an elite athlete, running marathons and triathlons and things like that. So the 3 components really of exercise that I focus on is aerobic health. That's things like running and elliptical trainers and cycling and those kind of things to get the heart rate up. I want to do that several times a week, at least 3 times a week. Resistance training, lifting weights, which also helps increase your metabolic activity. Resistance training has been shown to increase your metabolism for several hours after you complete lifting weights or other forms of resistance training. So lifting weights is one form. You've seen the rubber bands, the big rubber bands, elastic bands. Any form of resistance, push-ups, you don't need any equipment to do resistance training. You can do push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, anything that puts a strain on the muscles is considered resistance training. And the third, and often overlooked area of exercise is stretching. And that can be done with static stretching, sitting on the ground and stretching up against a wall. There's many different forms. Yoga is a very good way to stretch and make the body more limber, and so that's the third component of exercise that's really critical. Finally, we focus on sleep, and what I usually have them do is, and this is the same for diet, exercise, and sleep, is what I usually have them do is make a journal for at least a week where they note what they're consuming, how much exercise they're doing, how much sleep they're getting, their habits, that kind of thing. And when we talk about sleep, we want to make sure that you're getting usually a minimum of 8 hours sleep. 7 to 8 hours is the absolute minimum. Some studies have shown that 8 to 9 hours are optimal, but if you're not getting adequate amounts of sleep, it's going to have effect on you the next day, and there's a cumulative effect that's not good. And sleep deprivation has been shown to slow down reaction times and many other things. So it's not healthy, and it can actually be very detrimental to the body if you're not getting proper sleep. So if they aren't sleeping well, and you'd be surprised how many Americans aren't sleeping well, we'd look at several factors. The environment in which they're sleeping. It's been proven that sleeping in a cold, dark room is helpful as far as sleep's concerned. So we want to get into some good habits. Not eating a big meal, a few hours before bed. Not watching TV or working at a computer or anything where a display is emitting blue light onto you, and it's been shown that the blue light from computer screens and television screens and the like is actually mimics sunlight, and so fools the body into thinking that it's time to be awake. I just saw something recently that showed that there's some products, it's called an orange screen, or you can buy these orange light bulbs if you read before bed. And the orange light actually induces sleep. It gets the melatonin going and the kind of things that you need in order to sleep properly. So stay away from computers and TVs and that kind of stuff immediately before bed. Reading is a good thing, but reading in bed is not a good thing. So if you want to read and then go to bed, then that's fine. Watching TV in bed is not a good idea. Make sure that the bed is used for sleeping. Some other things possibly that we won't talk about here, but not reading and not watching TV or calisthenics or any of that kind of stuff. So proper sleep habits are really essential for getting a good night's sleep. If you can't sleep, there are some over-the-counter remedies. Melatonin is helpful for some people, but it's better to try and stay away from substances, man-made or otherwise, to sleep, and it's better to work on proper sleep habits to get a good night's rest. So that's the body portion of body mind behavior therapy, and that's where we usually start. That's a good solid base for what we're going to work on in the future, because if you're not eating properly, not exercising, not sleeping properly, the therapy is pretty much useless. So that's the groundwork where we start. Finally, to answer Matt's question, or to finish answering Matt's question, the final phase, and actually we do this is the first thing we do in the first session, is begin mindfulness training. And mindfulness is a big component of body-mind behavior therapy. I bring it up here because it's important to start mindful meditation early in treatment, but I mention it during the body portion of therapy because we're really starting to focus in the present moment on the body. And the most effective forms of mindful meditation focus on the breath, which is a natural function that we have very little control over. You can't make yourself stop breathing. You can for a time, but it won't last long. So breathing, mindfulness meditation of the breath is one of the first things that I do with my clients, and we do that at the beginning of each session for 5 minutes or so, just to kind of set the tone for the session. So the first session we do a mindfulness meditation of the breath, and then as far as the body is concerned, we move on in later sessions to scanning the body while we're focusing on the present moment. And as I spoke about in episode 1, mindfulness is an important component of this therapy, and it's something that I incorporate in every session, and I ask my clients to practice every day. Next week, the episode of Combat Counselor Q&A number 4, where we'll move on to the mind component of body-mind behavior therapy, and to talk in a little bit more detail about how we deal with the mind. So stay present, resilient, and stay the course. This is Combat Counselor for Combat Counselor Q&A. Great week. See you next Saturday.